I don't
completely.
think we do enough time of this in our own lives sometimes with sharing our testimonies or providing space for people to share theirs,
Yeah.
because those are the moments of growth. Those are the moments for me. I always say God gets bigger through somebody else's testimony. You're like, oh, I never tapped into that. So
Well, I
we're
also
going to
think
make
it's
a
the
place right in the beginning.
process. Like, I think a lot of people think of testimony as like the past or something that they've overcome that was like, years ago. Like my book, right, is like a testimony of that season of my life or that genre of story. Like there was 1,000 stories I didn't include in that element of my life. So I think it's fun just to even have testimonies of like the last week where God has shown up or the last day where you've seen him move. I know Janice and I had a gift of having a conversation yesterday that was just rich, so much so that her husband said, "Your face looks nicer today." Like you just look nicer. And so I think there's just sometimes like I think the prayer, like testimony to that was just connection. I think often we can like create these storylines in our life of like removing ourselves from situations. And we then are like, wait, I feel discombobulated. I feel isolated. I feel like I am lacking the truth or wisdom and we create those storylines that then put us in a space of disconnection. And that's the enemy's tactic all the time. And so what about that? What about that lens? Does anybody have something that ignites inside of them as far as like a testimony from the last week or even just within the last 24 hours? And Chris Rickstrew is currently stuck on a frozen smile that on my computer and he's just like grinning. And I know it's not frozen, but it's like the best thing ever. I don't know why he's frozen, but he's smiling so big.
The perma smile.
Oh, he's live again. You're live again, Chris.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking about that,
I'm
how
frozen.
Unfrozen.
I was thinking about that, Tamara, as you were talking about sometimes our testimony, we think we have to get to the end of it to give it. But it's kind of like a big climb. And there's waypoints along the way. If you go on a real big climb, there's moments you got to stop and take a rest. Maybe you got to even put up camp for the night. And knowing that along those ways, when you get to those waypoints, looking back is a testimony that you can take the next step. It's not a testimony that you'll complete the next step, but it's that I can complete something, so I got to keep going. And then every moment forward is that place. So even in our own life, living through our own testimonies, sometimes we undervalue the testimony of what we just came through because we feel like it's not where we're trying to get. It's not, okay, I'm trying to get from A to Z and I just made it to B, so it's not really that big a deal. Look at everybody else that's hanging out in Q and P and I'm stuck at B. And God's like, but you made it to B. That means you can move further than you were. So the testimony that you have to give sometimes to yourself in the mirror is like, I can take another step. This is not the end. There's still the invitation to go. Julie, you got your hand up.
Oh,
Go.
Did
Oh,
you see Jill's comment too in the
yeah.
chat? My testamiddle. That's good. Go, Julie.
The mess in the middle, right? The thing I was just thinking about is how there are things that we often will go through before the rest of the body of Christ does, as a way of learning, as a way of growing. And so we're prepared to help other people go through it. At church on Sunday, one of the leaders stood up and said, like, the global church is entering into a building season, and it's time to expand and grow. And I just laughed because for the last 10 months, I've had construction on all four sides of my house, like literal construction outside of my window all the time. And so it's like, yeah, I've been in a building season. I'm still in it. But it's like there's the skills that we get to learn in the mess of the middle, right? Like just all the things that we get to navigate and still stay in a place of like trusting in the faithfulness of God, even when the mess is all encompassing and surrounding us. And the thing I was thinking about the other day was a friend of mine leads a book study, and she was out of town and asked me to cover it. And the topic for that week was cultivating a happy brain. And I honestly was not feeling like I had a happy brain that day. I was not feeling it. I was just like, okay, this is going to be an act of will. But I was so blessed just by going through the material and by speaking it out to other people. I felt like it shifted everything inside of me. And then the beauty of like seeing everything around you in alignment with what God is doing in your life or what he's teaching you. And I've been reading I love the Passion Translation. I've been reading Joshua in the Passion Translation, and I've studied this book for 15 years and just love it. But reading it in a different translation just gives something so insightful and new and fresh. And this is the part in Joshua 3 where they're wading into the Jordan, and the water gets held back. But the thing about it is, I feel like so many people have been hearing that we're entering into the promised land. Like, this is a season of where we're building, and the things that are coming are going to be the fulfillment of the promises that have been held back for a long time. And this was the first time that I had read this, where they were talking about where it's written, as you advance into the land, he will drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, all those people, all the ites. But in the translation, in the extra material, it explains that the meaning of each of those names, that Canaanites are those who traffic in materialism. So that's the love of money. And Hittites means in Hebrew, those broken in pieces, terror or dread. And that represents anger and violence. And it just shows like the meaning of each of those names, the 7 names. Hivites means life born of effort or beastly life, and it represents human effort and reliance upon self. All these different things, these are all inner strongholds. These are all things that we get to conquer to enter into the promised land. And so as I'm dealing with like the construction all around me and some of the irritation of the constant beeping or the roadblocks where you have to go a different way, it's like these are strongholds that I get to partner with God to remove, that will keep me free flowing, will help me to have that happy brain, but also just to be connected with what God is leading me into. Like, what is my promised land and what is your promised land? And what are the strongholds we each get to walk like out of agreement with God and create our own like positive strongholds? Like, I want to go brick by brick and remove like the negative stronghold and be like, no, I want a joy stronghold. No, I want to make a kindness stronghold. Like, I want to rebuild the things that have been built in my life because of just the patterns of life. And I want to build them according to the ways that God is guiding me and leading me. So that's my fresh revelation for this week.
I'm going to challenge something you said, Julie, because that's what I like to do.
Please do.
You said the strongholds that we have to encounter to get into the promised land, but they encountered those strongholds in the promised land. That's where we can get stuck sometimes. We feel like we got to overcome those to get into our promised land. So we may be in our promised land, but still have a broken mindset that we're not there yet because of the strongholds we have to overcome. He said, I'm going to put you into a place of abundance, but these are the things you're going to have to go against one by one in that place to understand the value of the place you're in. Sometimes those battles and struggles can limit, and that's why going back to this testimony, he's taking us to the promised land. So I got to be in the promised land. So then when I come up against opposition, I'm not in my promised land. And he's like, look at all around you. You get so focused on a moment of struggle, a moment of test, that you missed what's been done to get you to this place. The moment they crossed, if you think about it, a smaller miracle than had been done before. It took a whole Red Sea to split to get them into the wilderness. It just took a little river to get them to the place of abundance, the place of promise. So even that place, sometimes a little moment, we need to have a testimony of our past moment to know I don't need to have another Red Sea split because he did that to get me here. Now I'm not going to undervalue God because he just pulled back a river, because I know the same God that did that did this. He knows what I need when I need it. And it's never going to be the same. It's going to be based on the place I'm in, which is a powerful moment of realization